Well, guess what? We're back on part three. I just went and got me a cup of coffee and I got me some water that's already here. And on part three, remember on part two when I ended, I was talking about that I walked into the bank and everybody says, Ray, where's Gracie? Where's your mom? Where's your mom? I said, oh, she'll be in here, but I really want to talk to the banker. Now, I knew this banker. I knew him my whole life. I'd been there every Saturday. The old guy, he had no children, but I tell you what, back in the old days, after the Depression, a lot of people came together, and the bank had closed in our community. And what happened, it was a really hard time during the Depression. And my dad's mom and dad, they were big farmers. They farmed. And if I heard the story once, I heard 100 times that Grandpa sold all his grain, sold some livestock, and took all his money, put in the bank. And 2 days after he put all his money in the bank, plus the money he had in the bank, that little bank in Auburn, Illinois, closed its doors, went broke. Never told anybody nothing. And I guess during the Depression, everybody came against him, won the money out of the bank, out of the bank, out of the bank. And they did not have money because they lent all the money out. And back in those days, you didn't have the FDIC, that guaranteed X amount of dollars. And Grandpa, they lost everything. And my dad had a brother, his name was Delbert, but they always called him Uncle Fat, or I called him Uncle Fat. And he wasn't fat at all, he's a tiny little guy. And Grandpa, he's just beside himself. He didn't know what he's going to do. No money. Lived on the farm. They had chickens and they had livestock, this and that, but nothing. I mean, everything he had was gone. Gone, 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 gone. And what ended up taking place, Grandma kept saying over and over, Sid, how much money do we need? His name was Sid. And Sidney. And he says, what difference does it make? We don't have any money. And they lived on a farm. Off the kitchen, there was a great big, huge old pantry where Grandma had all kinds of canned stuff that she'd canned and pressure cooker had in the pantry. And there was a big old milk jug. And back in those days, them big old round jugs were big. They came up to your waist. They had two big old handles on them. And Grandma said to the boys, my dad and Uncle Fat, go in there and get the milk jug. And they had this big old round table. And I'd never seen it, but it was a big old round table. I heard the story. And the three of them, Grandma and my dad and Uncle Fat, picked that big old milk jug up, took the lid off and turned it upside down. And that whole table was saturated with coins and paper money. And my grandpa he says, where in the world did you get all this money? She says, honey, how long have we lived here on the farm? She says, every time somebody came to buy eggs or buy this or buy that or pay for the meat, pay for the beef, paid for this, paid for that, I'd just take the money and I'd just open up the lid. She says, I just threw the money in this old milk jug. I mean, it was big, huge. And it held gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons of milk. And I have no idea, but I remember my dad always saying, Grandpa always said, how much money's there? She says, we don't know, we got to count it. But there was enough money for them to survive and put a crop in. And for a couple of years, they kept farming. They had the money to do it, which was just a blessing. What ended up happening is all the insurance companies and all the bankers came to Grandpa and wanted my grandpa to buy the farms. And Grandpa said, I'm not going to buy nothing off you guys. You foreclose on them, still, some of these old farmers out here had their payments paid and they didn't owe you any money. That was caught up and you demanded their money and took the money away from them or took the farms away from them, sold the farms and you got them now. Now you can't sell them. No. So what he ended up doing with the insurance companies and with the banks, he ended up renting the farms. And back in those days, if you farmed 80 acres, 80 acres with mules and horses and stuff, that was a big farm. Grandpa, he used to farm 160 acres before all this took place. Then he went to 240. And anyway, long story, short story, during the height, right before the crash, Grandpa had about 420 acres that he was farming, and a lot of farmers only had 80. Well, he ended up with 2,000 acres. And good, bad, or indifferent, Grandpa never bought them farms. He always tenant farmed. And he went to all the farmers that used to live on them farms, and they was living with family in town or anywhere. And he said, come back and help me farm your farms, and you can live in the farms. They'll be your farms. I want a percentage, and you can have a percentage, and the bank or the insurance company have it. And a lot of them farms, until recently, some of the farmers was able to buy their farms back, after this whole thing took place. And Grandpa helped him do it. Well, Grandpa, he passed away. He was really young. A mule, they say a cat had gotten underneath the hoofs of a mule, and the mule was kicking to get the cat away and hit my grandfather in the back of the head. And they don't have any idea how long he laid there. Ended up, had a blood clot, ended up having a stroke. And at a very young age, Grandpa had to move into town. That's where Grandma lived. And you know what? He died at a very young age, 62 years of age, he died. And anyway, long story, short story, Grandpa really understood banking. And he says, you know what? Use your own money. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And you know what? A lot of the old timers, they didn't trust banks. They didn't trust them. And one day, I'm going to teach you on the FDIC in the School of Kings and Priests in the Financial Realm, how all this thing works. But anyway, long story, short story, this old banker that was in town, he owned farms. And I had sold him a lot of baby pigs. I sold him a lot of calves that I had. And I went in there and we sat down in his office, and he was huge. He was obese, had the biggest belly you ever seen. And at the bottom of his shirt, his bottom button was so tight it looked like it was ready to explode. And his belly button looked like it was that big around. And he didn't have a t-shirt on, just a shirt that literally you could see through when he sat down. But the back roller was off the chair. And when he sat down, he went backwards, but his belly even got bigger. And all I could do was look at that belly, and he says, Ray, what are you doing? What do you got to sell today? What do you got to sell? I said, I don't have anything to sell, but I says, I tell you what I came for. I want to borrow some money. He looked at me and he had these glasses on, and he pushed his glasses back up, and he says, you want to do what? I said, I want to borrow some money. He said, what do you want to borrow some money for? I said, I want to buy, I bought Mrs. Moose's house. He said, by the side of your grandma's? I said, oh yeah. He said, what'd you get for it? I said, they wanted $10,000, and he was like my mom. When I went home on my bicycle and told my mom that I bought the house for $8,500, she just shook her head. She thought it was way too much money. So anyway, he thought the same thing. That's the high end of the house, buying that house. But I said, I bought it for $8,500. Now today, $1,500 is not a lot of money. But when you worked all year and hopefully you got $5,200 a year, $5,200 is a year's pay. Guess what? $1,500, guess how many weeks? That's 10 weeks, worth of pay, if not more. 15 weeks worth of pay. So it was a lot of money, at that time. And he said, that was a great buy. He said, Ray, how are you going to pay for it? I said, well, like everybody else, with payments. And he started laughing. And he said, you going to put any money on this thing? And I had my passbook savings account. And I pulled it out and I handed it to him. And he opened it up and he says, Ray, where'd you get all that money? I think I had $2,011 in my savings account. He said, where'd you get all that money? I said, I'm here every Saturday. I'm in here every Saturday. And every time I get $1 or $5, $10, $20, whatever it is, I put in the bank. And he says, how much do you want to put down on the house? I said, $500. And he says, and I says, besides that, I got to tell you, I got more than that. He said, you got more money than that in the bank? I said, no, it's not money. But I says, my cows, and my livestock is worth more than $2,000. And he smiled and he says, "You're just like your grandparents and just like your mom and dad." And I says, "Well, what can I say?" And he says, "If your mom and dad will sign the notes on this house, I'll give you the money." Oh man, I couldn't get out there fast enough. I shook hands with him. I says, "You got a deal." Got on my Western Flyer bicycle and pedaled home and jumped off that bicycle and ran into the house. And Mom's peeling potatoes in the kitchen sink. I says, "Mom, I got the money." She says, "You got the money?" I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "I got it." And she says, "He gave you the money?" I said, "Yep. If you and Dad will sign the note with me, I got her." She said, "Oh my goodness." She says, "Honey, I'll tell you when to start talking to your father tonight. Let me handle it, and I'll let you know when to start talking to your dad about going to the bank." My mom made a banquet for my dad. He loved fried chicken. My dad, back in those days, you don't have the steroids and everything that chickens has today. But my dad could eat 2 fried chickens, no problem. No problem. It was nothing for him to eat a chicken, but he usually ate 2, and Mom should fry up a bunch of chickens, for us when we ate. My brothers, but at that time, I was the only one home. And Mom made mashed potatoes and gravy and green beans and made a big old pie. And we're eating, Dad's eating this chicken. And all of a sudden, Mom kicks me underneath the table. I says, "Dad, I went to the banker today." He said, "Really? What'd you go to the bank for? You put some money in the bank?" I said, "No, matter of fact, I went to borrow some money from the bank." He said, "You did what?" I said, "I went to borrow some money." He said, "What do you want to borrow any money for?" I said, "I bought Mrs. Moose's house." He said, "You did what?" I said, "I did." He said, "What do they want for that?" I said, "They want $10,000, Dad, but I bought it for $8,500. And the banker will give me the money if you and Mama sign the note." My dad dropped his fried chicken in the mashed potatoes and gravy. And do you know how long eternity is when your eyes connect with your mom's eyes and you can't breathe? It seemed like an eternity. And finally, my dad says, "You bought that house by the side of my mom's house for $8,500. I said, "I did." He said, "Man, that was a great buy." He said, "How are you going to pay for it?" I says, "Well, the payment is $67 a month, and I can do it. I got $67. I said, I got a couple, I got $1,500, left in my bank, but I really don't want to spend it. But I'll do it, Dad. I can do it." He says, "I'll tell you what, me and Mom will sign that note, but if you ever miss a payment, I'm telling you right now, it's ours." I says, "Dad, I'll pay for that house." So we went in, signed the note. And before we ever closed on the deal, there was a young man that was a year older than I was, and his dad was a carpenter, and he sold the house that he built as a spec house, and they was living in it, and they needed a place to rent. Said they wanted to rent it for 1 year. So I said, "You can have her, $75 a month." And that paid my payment, took care of taxes, a little bit of insurance, and you know what? I was okay. I mean, sounds crazy, but you make an extra $50. Don't sound like a lot of money a day, but you know what? Taxes was cheap, insurance was cheap, and you know what? That was my payment. And they lived there till me and Billy Sue. I was 19 or 20 when I got married, and I got to tell you something. I had that little house paid for when me and Billy Sue got married. That was our house, little bungalow. And I think Billy Sue always tells me, she says, "Ray, you almost had that house paid for. You owed just a little bit. And your mom and dad, what they did on our wedding, they gave us, or they paid off what was outstanding, on the balance on the house."
1,000.
But I think it was Billy Sue's just saying right now she thought it was less than $1,000 is what, or maybe over 1,000. But they paid it off for me, and we had that little house. When we got started, that was our little house. But there's one thing that is the most phenomenal thing that I'm going to teach in our school is, it's an amazing thing at 13 years of age. By the time I was 19 or 20, I had that little house almost paid for. But there's a way you pay for a house that the banker will never in a million years tell you how to pay for a house. Most people will go to a bank, they'll get a loan, And what they'll do, they'll sign their name on the note, on the mortgage. And what they'll do, they'll get a 30, 20, some people get a 15, but 20, 25, or 30-year loan, usually 30-year loans. And most people don't live in a house 30 years. So, you know, what they're really doing, they're paying a payment to have a place to live. And hopefully the appreciation of that real estate will go up in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever. And you know what? They've got money. And the biggest investment you ever make in your life is buying a home. At a very young age, I learned literally, I mean, this may sound crazy to you, but I had a long-term loan on my that house, and the only thing that changed is the interest, and they locked in the interest for X amount of years. I think it was like 5 years. They gave me a rate on my interest, but the payment, it over the whole period of time was $67 a month, but it was for like, I don't know, it was going to take me like 20 years to get that home paid for. And it could have been 30, but I'm thinking 20 years. That's been a long time ago. But there's something I learned from my mother and my father, and what I learned being young is how to pay for a home extremely fast. And then no strains, no pains, no nothing. And in the school of kings and priests in the financial realm, I'm going to teach you, one of the first things I'm going to teach you is, if you're going to buy a home, and you want to buy a home, and you want to know how to have a home paid for in less than 10 years, what you pay for the school, and you want a home and have it paid for, what I'm going to teach you in the first year is going to be worth more than the whole school is going to cost you to go to the school for a whole year. And I got to tell you one thing, you've got to be hungry, and you certainly want to be a part of a school that's going to last, not 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. This is going to be a school that's going to be extended. You're going to be taught, you're going to be trained, you're going to be equipped to understand some things, not only in the natural realm. A lot of people, you know, you look at Larry Burkett, you look at John Maxwell, you look at some of the greatest teachers. You know, there's a lot of good teachers. You know what? You look at Mike Murdoch, you know what? They all got great material. Really great material. I mean, it's good. I've studied them. But every part of it, they use scripture, but every part of it, I'm not throwing stones because it's really good. It's helped a lot of people. But there's one thing you got to realize. There's a devil. And you got to understand the spiritual realm of finance, because I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how smart you are. You can get in trouble. I've gotten in trouble. And you know what? I don't have all the answers, but there's a lot of answers I do know, and I look back, and people perish for one reason. You know why we perish? For the lack of knowledge. And we don't understand everything there is pertaining to how the laws are written, how this is done, how that's done. I got to tell you, the enemy can slide in, he can seduce you, he can beguile you, he can put you in a snare, put you in a trap, and you want to know one thing? He'll want to make a slave out of you. And when fear and anxiety comes from finances, you will be depressed. Depression, a spirit of depression will come upon you. You'll feel rejected, and you'll think God has abandoned you, and rejection will come. Friends around you don't want to talk to. You can't think straight. You can't even tie your shoelaces. And then you start rebellion against God, against everything there is. And when you go into rebellion, guess what? You're in the enemy's camp. And when you go into the enemy's camp, rebellion can never come into your life, and lack of finances in your life, until all these 4 steps is already in play. And when they're in play, guess what's going to take place? The enemy, it's just like studying Jeremiah. There's 6, maybe 7 things that God hates. And the last thing God hates, guess what he hates? Is called discord. When discord is in your life, in your marriage, in your finances, in the church, in the nation, look at all the discord in the United States of America right now. That Billy Sue's doing a teaching right now that's just phenomenal. And as we speak, we've been fasting for several days, or several more days we're going to fast. And we're fasting for the nation. We're fasting for the President of the United States of America. And I'm not talking about just not eating cheeseburgers. I'm talking about a fast. Fast. Water. Drinking. You know what? Seeking the face of God. Fasting's good for your health. And health is tied to your wealth. So when you realize discord is an abomination unto the Lord, when abomination comes, it's not the first step. Study the other 6 things that's in play before abomination comes. When you see a church that's splitting down the middle and there's discord when things has happened, you look at the president with the Democrats, the Republicans, the House, the Senate, discord, discord, discord. It's an abomination. You look in your marketplace, you look in business, you look at your job, you look at the people you work with. If there's discord, I'm telling you right now, it's from the pits of hell. It's an abomination. It's a demon spirit. In the financial realm, guess what happens? There's discord. It comes from the enemy. We got to understand spiritually. So the kings and priests, the school, it'll teach you things in the natural realm. But there's one thing that people that I've studied, I'm sure there's other people out there that has a tremendous anointing in teaching things in the financial realm. But I got to tell you one thing that I know. Very few people that I've heard in the sphere of influence that I've been in has ever taught in the areas of the spiritual realm of finance and a demon spirit, a pagan god that's mammon. And in the school, I will just start downloading, me and Billy Sue, teaching. And many years ago, I started writing down all kinds of verses in scripture because in the church world I came out of and was born and raised, you know what I heard even in the charismatic movement? You know what? There was about 10 verses that was used in the financial realm. Giving and receiving, seed time to harvest, sowing seed, doing this, doing that. I mean, it was all great. It was the word of God. But that was it. When I went to Israel, I got to tell you one thing. I was very blessed. Met a gentleman out of Dallas, Texas that was family was out of Israel. He was Jewish. I got connected to the family. From that, I met rabbis. From that, I met people that was in the government realm and different things. And I got to tell you, just amazing things took place. But you know what? They taught me these ancient pathways of God, in the financial realm, understanding things that most people don't understand in the body of Christ, how powerful the salt covenant is, how powerful things is. And I got to tell you what, at a young age, I understood natural things in the financial realm. And you know what? A lot of people will teach you. There's a lot of great teaching showing you how to invest and how to set money aside, how to have an IRA, how to have a Keel, how to do this, how to do that. But I got to tell you one thing. Never underestimate the power of Satan, because Satan controls the world system of finances. He controls it. You say what? And buying and selling and trading, doing commerce and doing business, that demon spirit. There's a lot of teaching, in the kingdoms, the 7 kingdoms, the mountaintops, the 7 pillars in, Proverbs. But on the top of the mountains, I got to tell you one thing. You ready for this one? Every kingdom has a mountaintop. And on the top of every mountaintop is a demon spirit that's mammon that controls finances, that controls them. You say, where did that come from? If you study Ezekiel 28, God said to Lucifer, Satan, whatever you want to call him, I made you beautiful, I made you perfect, and you was above all angels. I made you beautiful. But you know what I found in you? I ask people this all the time. Why did Satan get kicked out of heaven? You know why he got kicked out of heaven? People say, oh, pride, pride, pride. I smile at him. I says, well, that's a great answer. But the pride is the apple on the tree. Say the apple on the tree. It's the apple on the tree. What was the root that produced the fruits? An iniquity is always a root, and a root is always iniquity. And what you saw was pride, that was a fruit that was formed from the root of an iniquity. And God said in Ezekiel, I found iniquity within you. I found iniquity within you. And you want to know something? When you study it out, you'll see the word Satan was in charge of merchandising and trafficking. Study out in the Hebrew, you know what it is? Buying and selling, trading, doing commerce. Do you think heaven and earth was connected? Do you think Satan had the ability to go to and fro? If he's in the second heavens, and 2 Corinthians 4:4, it says the God of this world has blinded, the believers. There's things that we need to know. I found over 2,000 in a book I wrote in 1997, 98, or 99. It's called Wealth or Mammon. It's a good book. Man, copies just went all over the place. And we're going to put it on our webpage, and, you can download it. And you know what? I think you'll really enjoy it. And in that book, I literally wrote in there that I found 2,084 verses in the Bible pertaining to finance. There's 215 on faith, 218 on salvation, or vice versa. But there's 10 times more scripture verses on finances than them. 215, 218 times 10, 2,084 verses, folks. You know what? When you look at those verses and really understand it, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the different categories that I broke them down into, and I'm going to teach you verse by verse, and I'm going to teach you things, how this thing works in the financial realm. And in closing this session out, is you got to realize that when mommy or daddy or grandpa dies, and they have a will, they said sell everything we have, pay for the funeral expenses, pay the bills, and everything else be divided equally, all hell will break loose in the family. There'll be fights, there'll be arguments. As long as the land and the houses and the property and everything stayed intact, people might have been greedy waiting for it. But guess what happens? The spirit of mammon deals in fear and greed. And when that real estate, which is wealth, that God controls wealth. He doesn't control money. God's given us the power, the spirit of power to make wealth. When wealth is sold, land, homes, different things, cattle, flocks, silver, gold, bullion, natural resources, when it turns to cash, immediately the spirit of mammon attaches itself to that money. It'll attach itself to your heart. All hell will break loose. And in the seminar, we will teach you during the school how to walk in the salt covenant, how to cleanse that money so it'll multiply instead of just get eagle's wings and flies away. But in ending, I want to tell you one thing. Say this: the rest of my life is going to be the best of my life. Say it one more time. The rest of my life will be the best of my life. So let the Lord bless you and keep you. Let his face shine upon you and give you peace in Jesus' name. So today would be a great day to have a great day. So blessings from Ray and Billy Landers, and you have a great day. And I hope I can get this off okay. God bless you guys.
Just keep smiling.
Oh, I'm going to keep smiling until Billy Sue gets here. There used to be a red